office in the U.S. and Canada with $180 million in ticket sales. Today, shares of the Walt Disney Company down lower, little change now, down by about 0.1%. All of this, though, welcome news for AMC Entertainment Holdings. The company said turnout for Wakanda Forever led to its fourth busiest weekend of the year. AMC shares, they are pushing higher by 4.2%. Again, recapping the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all in the red right now. The S&P down 11 points, a drop there of 0.3%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Love the Marvel franchise. I'm just going to put it out
Did
there.
you watch all of them?
I
you
have.
Guys were, you have.
My daughter and I, it took me through the whole series, so looking forward. I got to wait for it to watch this with her. All right, let's get back to U.S. and China relations. Still with us is Tiff Roberts, Senior Fellow with the Atlantic Council's Asia Security Initiative, also Mansfield Fellow at the University of Montana, former Bloomberg Businessweek China Bureau Chief, and his book, The Myth of Chinese Capitalism, The Worker, the Factory, the Future of the World. He is still with us via Zoom from Montana. Hey, Tiff, I want to ask you kind of some rapid-fire questions, if I can. So, China and the U.S., how would you describe the relationship in the way forward? Is it a good one?
Oh, I think it's actually a troubled relationship, unfortunately. It's really a competitive relationship. They are both see each other very much as their number one rival for global superpower status. And, despite what they might say in meetings like the one yesterday between Biden and Xi, that is the reality.
So the Chinese economy, will it still be the engine the world has relied on?
I think not great news there. I think that, because of some of the things we discussed earlier, COVID zero policy, the crackdown on the property sector, but then larger structural issues. China's trying to make this transition from a factory to the world model, which was investment and debt driven, to a much more one driven by its own consumers, one driven by household consumption. And that's a really tough transition that is going to mean probably slowing growth for a number of years to come.
Are we seeing the world divided up? U.S. and its allies, China and its allies at this point? Or was it kind of divided up beforehand?
I mean, I think that it has been divided up, but I think we're seeing it slide further in that direction, two separate poles. I would say, though, that the U.S. has made some progress in the last year or two in terms of bringing more allies together, and China's helped in its own way on that as well by just one example, its support for Russia relative support for Russia related to the invasion of Ukraine has turned a lot of European countries away from China and made them feel that they have more in common with the U.S.
So given the answers to your rapid-fire questions from Carol just now, Tiff, what does it mean for investors? As I mentioned, we're getting earnings from Alibaba and JD later this week. The stocks that traded here in the U.S., the ADRs of Chinese companies, have really been getting beaten up over the last year and a half, although they've rallied recently. What does it mean for investors who want to be in the space?
Well, I'm afraid we're going to see more beating up of stocks. Alibaba, for the first time ever, they just had their massive Singles Day, our Black Friday of online retail sales. And this is the first time Alibaba did not announce what the figures were because they weren't very good, apparently. I think that we're going to see, as I said, a continued slowdown in the Chinese economy. We're going to see pressures on big multinationals. We're already seeing it with companies like Apple to diversify their supply chain out of China. The latest, lockdowns in Zhengzhou on the world's largest iPhone factory just show that. So I think we're going to actually have to see sort of a re-reckoning with global portfolios and the realization that China won't be the growth driver that it has been.
In terms of global supply chains, right, it's been, as you mentioned, Apple. It's been such an important part. It's given American consumers for many years the ability to pay not a lot for a lot of things that we all need. And we know it's been shifting to some extent over the last few years as China doesn't want to be kind of the manufacturer necessarily to the world. But does that mean in terms of global inflation, maybe it does stay higher because China is going to be very different going forward?
I think there's definitely going to be related global inflation. As companies feel the pressure to diversify their supply chains, partially because of the pandemic, partially because of the U.S.-China tensions, and partially just now the realization that it's not so smart to have all your eggs in one basket. There are going to be costs associated with that, and ultimately those costs will have to be passed on to the consumer as well.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Hey, listen, Tiff, thank you so much. Always appreciate Dexter Tiff Roberts, Senior Fellow with the Atlantic Council's Asia Security Initiative. As we mentioned, a former Bloomberg Businessweek China Bureau Chief, and his book is about the myth of Chinese capitalism, the worker, the factory, and the future of the world, and really gets into, I feel like, some of these issues that maybe are also coming through when it comes to the longer-term story for China specifically.
Did you get Senior Fellow for the Mansfield Center at the University of Montana, too? He's got a lot of titles, and we appreciate him taking the time and joining us. Always good to see Dexter Tiff Roberts. As you mentioned, Carol, a go-to voice for everything when it comes to understanding what's going on in China.
All right, let's get back to world and national news. For that, Ann Moss, too. She's in our Bloomberg newsroom. Hey, Ann.
Hey, Carol. Hey, Tim. Police in Virginia and Idaho are investing cases involving the murders of college students. Earlier today, authorities announced the capture of a shooting suspect in the deaths of 3 University of Virginia football players and the wounding of 2 other students. Meanwhile, 4 University of Idaho students are dead in what police are describing as a homicide case. The president also says the midterm election result also sent a message to the world that the U.S. is ready to play.
The Republicans who survived, along with the Democrats, are of the view that we're going to stay fully engaged in the world and that we, in fact, know what we're about.
This after meetings in Indonesia, the president acknowledged it'll be tough for Democrats to keep their majority in the House. He says he does not think they'll get there, and that'll make it harder to do things like codify abortion rights. For the first time, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos is promising to give away the bulk of his fortune. In an interview with CNN, the world's 4th richest person says he's focusing on climate change and healing social divides, but he's still figuring out how. He says it took time to build Amazon, too.
Philanthropy is very similar. It's not easy. It's really hard. And there are a bunch of ways that I think that you could do ineffective things, too. So we're building the capacity to be able to give away this money.
Jeff Bezos is worth an estimated $123.9 billion, according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. And Jay Leno is seriously injured after suffering from burns to the face due to a car fire. TMZ reporting Leno was in the Los Angeles garage where he stores his cars when one of them erupted into flames. He suffered burns on the left side of his face, and he's currently hospitalized, although his condition is unknown. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 100 countries.
Thanks so much for that update, Ann. Really do appreciate it. Well, it looks like the fear that many Tesla investors expressed when Elon Musk made his bid for Twitter has come to fruition. He may have bitten off more than he can chew. Speaking during a virtual appearance at the B20 Indonesia Summit in Bali, Musk spoke a few hours after tweeting that he'd been inside Twitter headquarters all night and would be working and sleeping there until the organization is fixed. Check it out.
Oh, man. I have too much work on my plate, that is for sure. I mean, I'm really working at the absolute most amount that I can work from morning till night, 7 days a week. So this is not something I'd recommend, frankly.
That's Elon Musk tweeting. Well, he was tweeting also, but talking to Twitter headquarters in San Francisco to the B20 Indonesia Summit in Bali. He also tweeted that, quote, "I have Tesla covered too," saying he'll be with the car maker part of this week. Carol, Tesla shares getting hit today. They're down. They were down as much as 4.9%. In the start of the day, but down about 2% right now.
You know, he's often talked about like work or what he needs from his workers, like, come on, we got to get it done, da-da-da. And our reporting by Agresh Simhambing saying that Musk's description of his work schedule, reminiscent of how he depicted the hellish time Tesla had started production of its first mass manufactured vehicle. We're talking about the Model 3. He said in interviews at that time that he camped out at the car maker's plant in Fremont, California, sleeping on a couch or under a desk. And at that point, I think we kind of were like, look what a leader does.
Well, he was really worried about Tesla then going bankrupt, and he was worried about Tesla failing, and he's expressed similar worries about Twitter failing. He said, you know, was it last, I can't remember if it was even last week or the week before.
I think it was last week, wasn't it?
Yeah, but worried about, you know, the health of Twitter as a viable company.
Yeah, it's just kind of interesting. And I guess, you know, we've all talked about how much he's got on his plate. It is interesting, the stuff that's kind of coming out at this point. And I guess we'll see. I mean, it does feel I mean, many would argue it's been a little bit erratic in terms of what he has to say about Twitter right now.
And just don't look at his tweets, Carol.
No, I know. And I keep going like, what's Twitter trading at? I'm like, it's not public anymore.
headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Earlier gains for the U.S. stock market have fizzled. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all in the red right now. 13 minutes to go. Right to the numbers. We'll give you the why in a moment here with the S&P now down 17, a decline there of 0.45%. The Dow down 52, down by 0.2%. The NASDAQ Composite Index down 87 points right now, a drop there of 0.8%. 10-year, the yield 3.87% with the 2-year yielding 4.40. 0.40%. Spot gold up $1.39 the ounce to $17.72, up by 0.1%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil down 4.1% right now, 85.28 a barrel. Stocks had been swinging between gains and losses. Right now, though, stocks in the red as investors mull what the Federal Reserve Vice Chair Lael Brainard's comments mean for the central bank's path ahead. Again, recapping, 10-year yield 3.87%, S&P down by 0.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much for that update, Charlie Pellet. It's 3:48 on Wall Street.
The following is an editorial from Bloomberg Opinion.
This editorial was written by the Bloomberg Editorial Board. Already the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, Haiti is on the brink of collapse. Gang warfare and rolling anti-government protests have blocked the distribution of food, fuel, and water, and rising crime has forced tens of thousands of Haitians to flee. At the request of Prime Minister Ariel Henry, the U.S. and its regional partners have been exploring a possible armed intervention. They should think twice. While Haiti's rich neighbors must do more to help, sending foreign troops risks an even greater disaster. The Biden administration should instead focus on building the capacity of Haitians themselves and provide humanitarian relief directly to agencies with a proven record of distributing funds effectively. Sustained diplomatic engagement and security assistance, not military intervention, holds the best chance for success. This editorial was written by the Bloomberg Editorial Board. For more Bloomberg Opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg Terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no.
Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
It's
the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, let's get to it. We've got just about 9.5 minutes left in today's trading session. Charlie talking about you noticing too, Tim, just the rollover that we've seen in the equity trade. We described it as wobbly at the beginning of our broadcast, and it continues to be that way. And we are definitely off our best levels of the session right across the board.
Yeah, stocks moving between gains and losses more than a dozen at times today, but certainly seeing the downside with the S&P down close to...
A dozen times.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Look, searching for direction, right?
Yeah.
Let's get into it with Dan Ahrens, Managing Director and Portfolio Manager at Advisor Shares Investment. Dan, this afternoon joining us on the phone from Texas. Dan, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. Hey, you've got a few plays that we want to talk about, and it's good to talk to you again, by the way. You've got the Advisor Shares Pure U.S. Cannabis ETF and some other Vice holdings, but I want to get big picture from you before we get to those holdings. Where are we, do you think? Because we're getting sort of different narratives from different Fed speakers over the last 24 hours, and investors certainly don't know what direction things should be going in.
Yes, we see a lot of that. When there's a lot of confusion, when there's lack of direction and people don't know what to do, I do think people should look at non-correlated assets like perhaps cannabis. But more than that, often consumer staples, things that might be recession resistant, stock market resistant, things that people are going to spend money on or consume no matter what's going on with the economy or the stock market, because I'm not going to give you predictions on the future, especially when we see from the Fed and everywhere else, lack of direction. People shouldn't be trying to guesstimate that stuff.
Hey, when you think about, because you've got, as you mentioned, different ways to play the market, and you do have a pure U.S. cannabis ETF, MSOS is the ticker, down 55% so far this year, but it's up about 14% over the past month. How did the recent midterms perhaps help that space, or kind of just keep it neutral? Yeah.
Well, I can't shy away from the fact of those down numbers for the year, like you said. But cannabis, until the past month, has been in pretty much an 18 or 19-month drawdown. Heck, ever since Biden was elected, they made promises back then. But a lot of people are pointing to these most recent midterms. There's some ballot initiatives. Maryland just passed adult use in the state of Maryland. That's a pretty populous state. Same thing in Missouri. So additional states continue to come online with cannabis. That increases sales yet again. But again, we had politicians promising us various levels of cannabis reform. I always like to say reform because I don't think we're ever going to have a coast-to-coast full legalization everywhere. If you really drill down, alcohol is not even legal everywhere. It's a very convoluted legalization market.
Wait, hold on. What are you talking about? That, I mean, I know you can't buy it in the grocery store in certain states. What do you mean by that?
Great question. There's cities and counties that don't have package stores. You have to go to a border to find a liquor store. Some states sell liquor on Sundays, some don't. Some it's beer and wine only. Sometimes you can't buy it before noon. Sometimes there's locations that have bars. Some places you have to buy a membership. Some places don't have any. It's very complicated stuff. So at the most, cannabis might be something resembling that type of model. But we digress. In this lame duck session, we just had these elections. What we ended up with, it looks like, it's not even done yet, is probably a Republican-controlled House. It looks like the Democrats are going to continue to control the Senate, and a lot of the experts feel that is good, that the current members of the Senate will finally roll over and do what's right, what they've been promising for the past 2 years, what the House of Representatives already approved, and that's some level of cannabis reform, such as safe banking.
I'm not going to hold my breath, and I'm not trying to rain on your parade, but I feel like I've had this conversation a million times, and I'm thinking, depending on what comes at the world next year, which could be maybe a recession and some other hard times, I don't know.
Hey, I just want to say something about the Safe Banking Act.
Sure.
It's on the tip of my tongue, Dan, and you can probably speak to this too, but I was in California over the weekend, and I rode my bike by a cannabis store. And I think because of the lack of a Safe Banking Act, they deal only in cash. And there was armed security outside of it as a result of what they're doing with cash.
Because they have to, right?
Because they have to. And I thought to myself, wait a second, if we do finally see... Because they're worried about getting robbed because everything is in cash. It's kind of crazy. And this is,
Oh, they're very, very much on point with worrying about being robbed. There's been armed robberies and murders happen in dispensaries because it's an all-cash business. It is outrageous, especially when these politicians have been playing games with people's lives over the last couple of years when the Democrats have had control of the Senate this whole time, promised to do reform, hasn't happened yet. That's why we think it's finally going to happen in the lame duck session. I mean, we have the American Bankers Association in favor of safe banking. Janet Yellen's in favor of safe banking.
Yeah.
70 to 80% of the population's in favor of safe banking. And a lot of people are finally pointing to, and again, I've sounded like a broken record for the past 2 years because I've foolishly believed in politicians a little bit. But we think we might finally get it in the lame duck session.
Yeah.
And if you look at history,
right,
an awful lot of legislation is passed in the lame duck session because they're not. Most politicians' most important goal is to get elected or get reelected.
Yeah.
And that is finally lifted off during this little lame duck session.
We shall see what will happen. But good to check in with you. Dan Ahrens, Managing Director, Portfolio Manager at the actively managed ETF investment management firm Advisor Shares Investments, joining us on the phone from Texas. Hey, folks, just want to give you a heads up that we have moved to our worst levels of the session when it comes to the S&P and the Dow Jones Industrial Average. We've really seen a leg down, I want to say, in the last 10, 15 minutes of trading here. So going down, we've seen the VIX move up, but right now the S&P 500 down about 0.8%, Dow down about 0.5 percentage point, and the NASDAQ a decline of about 1%. Right now we're going to head over to our TV colleagues for Beyond the Bell, our cross-platform coverage on radio, TV, YouTube, and on Bloomberg Quick Take. We're counting you down to the close.
Beyond the Bell, Bloomberg's comprehensive cross-platform coverage of the U.S. market close starts right now.
And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostic alongside Taylor Briggs, and we're counting you down to the closing bell. Here to help take us Beyond the Bell. It's our global simulcast with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovic. We welcome our audience across Bloomberg Television, Bloomberg Radio, as well as on YouTube and Quick Take. And Carol, a day where it looked like we had a nice little rally on our hands. 2 minutes to the close, we're all in the red across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like the momentum to the downside certainly picking up over the last 10, 15 minutes. So we're pretty much at our lows of the session when it comes to the S&P and the Dow Jones Industrial Average. NASDAQ kind of making its way. And if you look at most of the names in the S&P, Tim, we are definitely seeing more of a risk-off trade as we get into these final few minutes of trading.
Yeah, interesting to finally see some conviction in today's trade on a day when the S&P 500 moved between gains and losses more than a dozen times, really, and kept moving until the last hour of trading.
It's interesting that I think we're still struggling for a narrative. We're in that weird intermediate point where we're coming off of CPI, we're pushing forward to PPI, we're still in the middle of getting a lot of Fed speak this week. We are having a lot of global conversations as well. So I think this is a market, Romaine, that is still waiting for that next data point after the big rally that we had at the end of last week after the previous data point.
And if you're looking at technical levels, it's kind of interesting to look at the pivot graphs and see how tight those support and resistance levels are. The resistance at 39.92 earlier today and at 40.26. And that was tested pretty hard earlier in the day. We should point out support right now is at 39.40. We're not far off that here.
Indeed, I was going to ask you if your support lines were dotted or full lines of shade.
They are full lines, cyan, magenta, and I think marigold are some of the colors on my screen. If you're looking at the screen on your Bloomberg television right now, well, it's pretty much all red across the board. The Dow Jones Industrial Average that had been one of the bright spots earlier today going to finish lower by roughly 200 points or 0.6%. The S&P 500 lower by 35 points or 0.9%, while the NASDAQ composite is going to finish the day down by more than 1%. Similar story for the Russell 2000, Carol, down more than 21 points or roughly 1.1% on the day.
Yeah, so the volatility index, the VIX also moving up, very definitive as we saw equities move to the downside. We saw the VIX move up more than a point, about 1 1/3 points. Taylor finishing the day at 23.85, so almost 24.
I have to say, the story on a sector level looks a little bit different than we did a few hours ago. You really start to see the selling pressure show up underneath the surface. Carol, there's only one sector in the green. How defensive is this? Pharmaceuticals and bios, they're up about 1%. Everything else, though, is in the red. Even the best performers are still off 1 to 0.2%. Let's then come to the bottom of the screen where we can get a real glimpse into some of the big losers on the day. Some of the retailers, I know that we're going to push forward to those numbers tomorrow, consumer durables, and then, of course, some of those rate-sensitive sectors, real estate, and those auto components, those are off 2.6% on the day.
So, Taylor, you show that at the top of your list is pharmaceuticals and bios, and here's maybe two reasons why. Biogen is among the outstanding movers, if you will, in terms of gaining in the Monday session. Biogen up almost 5.5% at its highs, finishing the day with about a 3.3% gain, topping the S&P 500 and NASDAQ 100. This is after Roche's Alzheimer's disease drug failed to meet the main goals in a pair of large studies, which analysts said takes out a potential competitive threat for Biogen's therapy. So Roche's loss is Biogen's gain in today's session. Moderna, also a standout, up about 4.6% at the close, also topping the S&P 500, was number one in the NASDAQ 100. Not sure if it finished that way, but nonetheless atop that list. Moderna coming out and saying its bivalent vaccine sharply increases antibody levels against recent COVID strains when compared to a fourth dose of its original immunization. Pfizer also topping the S&P 500. We've been seeing some of these drug companies come out and talk about that latest vaccine when it comes to some of the Omicron variants. So that's out there. So Moderna, an outperformer. And Netflix outperformer, up more than 7% at its highs today, finishing the day with a 3% gain. gain. It's been top among the NASDAQ 100 and S&P 500. No real news of note, but there were those 13F filings coming out, and there were some hedge funds cutting their holdings in Netflix, others adding. Stock is up around 19%, give or take a little bit, in the past 3 trading days.
Well, Maverick Capital, of course, added big to that. Now has a pretty big stake in that company. Yeah.
But there was another one that also sold. So I'm just saying that there's kind of some, buyers and sellers when it comes to
Right, Two Sigma. But I think a lot of people now are
Maverick.
starting to wonder whether there's an activist component to some of these holdings.
All right, good color on that.
Okay, well, speaking of sellers, there are some sellers in Amazon today. A company, the third worst performer on a points basis in the S&P 500, down 2.3%, planning to lay off about 10,000 workers. It's the largest layoff ever at the company. It could begin as soon as this week. They're going to likely target the devices group. That's Amazon's Alexa assistant, as well as HR and the retail divisions. Also comes on the same day that we heard from Jeff Bezos that he plans to give away the bulk of his fortune during his lifetime. He is worth about $124 billion, according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. Tesla shares finishing the day down by 2.6%. They fell as much as 4.9% earlier in the day, but recovered some of those losses at the end of the day. This came after Elon Musk said that he's, quote, got too much work on his plate, that's for sure. He's saying that he's working the absolute most that he can work, morning to night, 7 days a week.
I know too.
You know what he's doing though?
Sounds like everybody here.
You could not have predicted this. You could not have predicted this.
He's also tweeting a lot. That's the thing.
So is SBF.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Amazing that people can find the time to tweet. We should note Tesla is down more than 50% from the highs of last November. Wow. And then Hasbro actually having its biggest drop since March of 2020, finishing the day down by 9.9%.
Did you see why?
I did see why. Were you a big Magic the Gathering player as a child?
No, but I'm always amazed. Someone pointed this out to me a couple years ago, how much of their revenue actually came from that. It's something like 15% of revenue and something like 30% of their adjusted earnings.
35% of EBITDA and 15% of revenue. That's according to an analyst, Jason Haas, who said that card prices are falling. He's talking Magic the Gathering. Game stores are losing money. Collectors are liquidating, and large retailers are cutting orders. This from Bank of America analysts. So,
Taylor, do you have any idea what they're talking about?
I just go to bond yields.
You didn't play Magic the Gathering?
Come on.
Apparently, I don't know. I have to figure out if my mom still has all my cards.
Can we investigate the connection between Magic the Gathering and crypto? Because I remember seeing a great article on Bloomberg, by the way, a few years ago about the connections between
the correlation.
Oh, I should go look at that.
Yeah.
1 to 1.
It's a correlation chart for you.
Fourth grade Tim never thought he'd be talking about Magic the Gathering.
Or was that 30
last year?
Yeah.
So your future Tim was already being mapped out way back then.
Very rude.
When in doubt, Carol, go to bond yields.
Please
pull up the bond yields. Save us.
What's the correlation with Magic at the Gathering?
Yields are up. That's all you need to know. And I think what is so interesting, and Carol, I know that we talked a lot about this on Thursday because, of course, Friday the bond markets were closed. But you're back up to about a 4 handle. Now, the 10-year yield is different. You're still down to a 387. But you've sort of had a little bit of a lift up today where mostly across the curve you can actually still get about a 4%. And that's just been a key level as you think about relative value and where we are and what 4% can finally bring you for the last time in, a decade. It's really been that long.
Well, I always think it's interesting, too, to take a look at what happened with the bond market and then kind of juxtapose that against what's going on in the equity market. And it felt like, and help me out here, Taylor, you are our bond expert, but I mean, it does feel like there's a lot more volatility in the equity trade today versus what we saw in the bond trade.
We were talking about this, Romaine. I know that you were here. When we think about the bond story that has been consistent, we've talked a lot about the Fed speak, a lot about the data, the retail sales, the PPI data, the consistent narrative that yields are rising, and you've seen the lack of consistency within that equity trade today. So it is at least a bond market that's really focused on that data to come.
And it gets to the bigger issue, too, as who's really calling, I think, the shots right now on the macro and the economy. Is it the equity market that's getting it right, or is it the bond market that's getting it right?
Well, most would say, right, the smart investor, forgive me, equity traders that are out there and equity
you
investors.
Always say this, Carol.
Well, no, but guests come on and say that the smart money is the bond market and the treasury trade.
What are the crypto traders?
Too soon, Romaine.
Class on their own.
Too soon.
Come on.
Hey, you know what's not too soon is that the end of earnings season, because we still got a few companies to report, namely earnings this week coming from the likes of Home Depot, we got Lowe's, we got Gap, Taylor. So we'll get some insight. What was that, Target? Walmart too. Yes, of course, a very important one coming tomorrow before the bell. And we'll get some insight into what the companies think about the fourth quarter. I mean, look at what Amazon said about its growth for the fourth quarter for the holiday season. Are we going to hear something similar from Walmart?
Yeah, desperately curious when you think about the inventory, the discounting, the health of the consumer, the not so much maybe the layaway trade, but more of the trading down if you're feeling pinched.
Yeah, well, when we talk about the inventory and the discount, I just tell you anecdotally, the number of emails and other things I've been getting from retailers already offering pretty interesting discounts ahead of Black Friday.
Yeah.
So these are already in effect. I mean, so you can go out and buy that stuff now. I think that's, I mean, it's just anecdotal evidence, but it's interesting.
Oh, good. So you bought us stuff?
Yeah, what did you get?
Oh, for you? No. I got Carol something.
How much does a lump of coal
I have to make up for all the
There's
time.
some Magic the Gathering cards on sale right now. That's what everybody's getting for Christmas.
No, Tim knows what's in his stocking.
All right, guys,
great.
we got to run. Some great conversation. Our cross-platform coverage, counting you down to the close and taking you through the close beyond the bell. Our cross-platform on radio, TV, YouTube, and on Bloomberg Quick Take. We will see you again, same time, same place tomorrow.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Messer and Bloomberg Quick Takes Tim Stenovic on Bloomberg Radio.
Magic the Gathering, huh?
Yeah, as a fourth grader, I remember it. I don't know. I don't even remember how to play, Carol. My brother sent me a text recently. This is just too much, right? But I'm going to tell you. My brother sent me a text recently, and he was like, "Hey, do you still have those Magic cards from when you were a kid?" And I was like, "I don't, but maybe our parents do."
Considering what you told me about
the toys that my parents saved from when I was a kid. Yeah.
Right? Over the weekend, right?
We were visiting my parents in California, and my parents saved a bunch of toys for our son for when he visited, and it brought back all these memories of me playing with these toys when I was a kid. Maybe the Magic cards are up there somewhere, and they're worth a ton of money, Carol.
So cool. I got to tell you, I inherited my sister's Barbies, and then my daughter inherited them. I mean, they've been around for decades.
And she sold them on eBay?
Exactly. That's how we're paying for college education as we speak. All right, everybody, let's get back to World and National News. There's a lot going on, as you know, and Ann Mostu, she's in the Bloomberg newsroom. She is covering it all. Hey, Ann.
Hey, Carol. Hey, Tim. President Joe Biden meeting with China's President Xi today at the G20 in Indonesia. Following that meeting, President Biden saying the two countries had been, quote, blunt with each other about their concerns and had agreed to have high-level members of each country meet to discuss issues. The president saying he believes China does not plan to imminently invade Taiwan.
I made it clear that we want to see cross-strait issues peacefully resolved, and so it never has to come to that.
The president says if North Korea carries out a nuclear test, he would further beef up U.S. forces in the Pacific, which he says she should not take as any kind of threat aimed at China. CIA Director William Burns met with his Russian counterpart in Turkey today. Bloomberg's Nathan Hager has more from Washington.
The White House says Burns delivered a warning against Russia using nuclear weapons in Ukraine, setting off a dirty bomb and blaming it on the Ukrainians. A spokesman says the meeting in Ankara was not a negotiation over the war and that Burns did not plan to discuss a settlement. The spokesman says the CIA director also planned to raise the cases of U.S. citizens unjustly detained in Russia. Last week, President Biden said he hoped Russia would be more open to a prisoner swap for WNBA star Brittany Griner after last week's midterm election results. In Washington, I'm Nathan Hager, Bloomberg Radio.
Thanks, Nathan. And 3 University of Virginia football players are dead after a shooting. Lavelle Davis Jr., Devin Chandler, and Deshaun Perry were all killed yesterday by former football player Christopher Darnell Jones Jr., who has since been caught by police. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Ann Mostu. This is Bloomberg.
All right. Thank you so much. Ann Mostu there with World and National News. Hey, Sophie Alexander, Bloomberg News, has a story on the Bloomberg, and this has to do, we talked earlier about Jeff Bezos, right, planning to give away his fortune. Well, his former wife, Mackenzie Scott, formerly Mackenzie Scott Bezos, said she donated nearly $2 billion to charity over the past 7 months in a blog post released shortly after her ex-husband, Jeff Bezos, said he planned to give away the majority of his fortune.
How are you reading into this timing, Carol? I mean,
take that, husband.
What?
Former husband.
Ex-husband.
Ex-husband.
The latest gifts bring Scott's total giving to more than $14 billion since her divorce from Bezos.
She's been giving it away fast and furiously.
Oh, she really has. The money has made its way to more than 1,500 nonprofits, including, quote, 343 organizations supporting the voices and opportunities of people from underserved communities. That's in the latest round, according to Scott's post on the blog site Medium.
You know, it's interesting, and there's been a lot written about how she's been giving her money away. A lot of times, was it Bloomberg or Business Week had a story that was just like like people sometimes all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, we just got a donation. Like it just doesn't come. It doesn't come through a foundation because she doesn't use a foundation, which would be mandated to release more information to the public under IRS rules. Instead, her giving is done through donor-advised funds with the help of a team of consultants. So that's why it's not always known what she's doing.
Well, these disclosures are entirely optional, and in recent posts, she's actually revealed less about where her gifts went or how much individual charities, how much these charities actually received. Meanwhile, in an interview with CNN that was published on Monday, Bezos, alongside his partner Lawrence Sanchez, this is Jeff Bezos, said he planned to give away the bulk of his fortune in his long lifetime to fighting climate change and supporting those who seek to address social and political divisions. It's actually the first time that he's made such a promise, and comes years after Scott signed the Giving Pledge, which is a promise by some of the world's richest people to donate the majority of their wealth to charitable causes in their lifetime or will.
If you're keeping track, like we are here at Bloomberg, Bezos has an estimated fortune of $123.9 billion, according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index, and Mackenzie Scott is worth $23.8 billion. That's some real money. It's a chunk of change.
Yeah, they've got a lot to give away.
They do indeed. All right, Bloomberg Business Week continuing on radio and on YouTube and Quick Take.
updates, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Back to work Monday, and it was all about the Fed speak today. Lower close, the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all finishing in the red. Stocks wrapping up a choppy session lower after two Federal Reserve speakers emphasized the central bank's resolve to be persistent until price pressures head back down to levels consistent with its 2% target. Today, the S&P dropped 35 points, down 0.9%. The selling intensified into the close. The Dow down 211 today, a drop there of 0.6%. NASDAQ Composite Index down 127 points, down 1.1%. 10-year yield 3.86%, with the 2-year yield 4.40%. Spot gold 17.71 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude today down 4.2%, 85.18 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. So you might recall a Bloomberg story last month as part of Bloomberg Business Week's top B-school rankings. It was a pretty big deal. It was that the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton announcing that its 2023 MBA class was the first in the program's 140-year history to be majority female. It was a first for a top 10 rated school, one that happens to be among the largest in the U.S. I mean, this just doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible to see this. We're very pleased to have with us this afternoon Alyssa Sangster. She's CEO of the Forte Foundation, joining us this afternoon on the phone from Austin, Texas. The Forte Foundation is a nonprofit, and it helps corporations and top universities and business schools with MBA enrollment. It's good to have you with us right now, Alyssa. So what can you tell us about 2022 MBA enrollment? Carol shared with us a pretty startling statistic, but what are you seeing in terms of a bigger picture? Like, when is this not going to be news?
Well, I think it's going to be a while, but I think we're heading towards some really good progress. I think that number from Wharton is very encouraging. We've been doing this for 20 years, and our entire effort has been focused around increasing this pipeline of women in business leadership. And this year, we were happy to report that about 17 of our member schools had hit that number of 45% or greater. Wharton, of course, hit the 50% mark, which is remarkable. But this is up from about 10 schools last year who had hit 45%, 2 schools 5 years ago, and 0 schools a decade ago had hit 45% or greater.
I mean, this is important. You know, I know, the world knows, right? It's about making a pipeline that is more diverse and one that obviously includes more women, Alyssa. And I mean, you guys are all about creating gender equity in business, you know, and changing the balance of power in the workplace. This is from your website. I love the terminology, but getting more women to be part of business schools or being the majority, that's going to help the pipeline longer term.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's what we really want to see, is that you know, we have women who are seeing that when they show up at business school, they look around and they see other women who are also there with them. Versus 20 years ago, they were the only woman in the room very often, especially the only woman on a classroom team. And seeing really is believing. So the more prospective students that see people in that MBA community and in those business leadership roles, the more they're going to believe that they too can succeed in business. And there really is power in those numbers.
Okay, so how do we make things even better, Alyssa? What do schools need to do, and what do corporations need to do? Because the interesting thing about business school when it comes to graduate programs is oftentimes people join them mid-career or perhaps even early on in their careers. And oftentimes it's through the support of the companies that they actually work for. So whose role is it to actually increase the representation when it comes to that?
Well, it definitely takes a village. And so there are a lot of players who can make these opportunities happen. And so if there was just one thing, I think we would have seen parity in the classroom long ago. But we really have had to peel back that layer of onion over the last 20 years. We've had to do things like showcase female role models in business. We've had to show those women who have already achieved leadership. We've had to look at the number of female protagonists who are in case studies that are taught in MBA programs. Are we reflecting leadership as we would like to see it in the future? We've had to develop allyship programs. So that's where the men can come alongside and say, yes, I want to see gender parity too. How can I be a voice and a part and take a role in that? So everybody has a role. The schools have to go out and creatively recruit and think about how they're showcasing business careers and business education. The companies have to think about the opportunities they're open and how they market the opportunities, and then how they advance women once they've recruited them and make sure that they can retain and see them achieving those leadership goals that they've set as an organization. So it really does take everyone contributing to this challenge, and that's how we're going to see ultimately success with more women leading.
Alyssa, I feel like that last part is so key, that once someone is in a place, a woman is in a place, that they're given the opportunity and the support to succeed and move up the ladder, if you will. And I guess I would always counter that as long as women are having babies, it's going to be kind of tricky unless you truly get that support all along the way.
It is true, and I think there are definitely societal challenges, personal challenges that contribute to that step up the ladder not always flowing as smoothly as you expected. But I think anticipating the problems, preparing for those challenges that you're going to encounter, both for the women and also for the companies and the managers who actually are promoting and making those decisions, everybody has to be equipped and ready to manage through those challenges versus being surprised by them and not having any real strategy for how you're going to continue seeing women move up into those positions. So flexibility and investing in those women, preparing them for what you want to see them do in the future, telling them and being transparent about that, all of that helps to address some of those hiccups that could occur.
Alyssa, just got about 30 seconds left here. If you could change one thing that you think would make such a difference in getting women into the system and supporting them and keeping them there, what would it be?
I'm going to pick keeping them there, and I'm going to go back to what we were just talking about, and that is training and making sure your managers are equipped and ready to deal with a diverse range of problems in order to pull the right people, the best people up into their organization, and that's what's ultimately going to get women to the top.
All right, going to leave it on that note. Hey, Alyssa, thank you. Alyssa Sangster, she is Chief Executive Officer of Forte Foundation, and they are a nonprofit working to create gender equity in business specifically, and giving women the tools or the opportunity to get an MBA as part of that process.
There's some pretty remarkable statistics here. The nonprofit reported a record 17 member schools reached at least 45% women enrolled in full-time MBA programs in 2022, up from 10 schools in 2021.
Did it feel equal when you were getting your MBA?
It did feel equal, oh yeah.
Okay.
It really did.
This is Bloomberg Radio.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 1061 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, you are listening and watching Bloomberg Business Week on this Monday. Carol Master along with Tim Stanovic. Coming up, a great way to wrap up our Monday. Ali Goldstein, president of L'Oreal Paris USA, is in our studio. We're going to talk about the business, but we're really going to talk about Women of Worth. It's an incredible program that they've been doing for years.
She's back after...
She's back.
She was back here a year ago.
Yep.
So we're looking forward to chatting with her about the program and the business in just a minute. First up, though, Charlie Pellet. Lots of news happening in the after hours. Let's start with the trade today, though.
Indeed, it was a down day, Tim, with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all declining, closing at session lows. And this update brought to you by SEI. Visionary asset managers find opportunity where others are challenged. Exploit disruption's potential with SEI's global operating platform. Find out how at SEIC.com/IMS. First, federal prosecutors in Manhattan say Rudy Giuliani will not face federal criminal charges connected to a probe of undisclosed foreign lobbying on behalf of Ukrainian interests. Stocks ended a choppy session lower after two Federal Reserve speakers emphasized the central bank's resolve to be persistent until price increases head back down to levels consistent with its 2% target. Kristen Bitterly is head of North American Investments with Citi Global Wealth Management, and she was interviewed on Bloomberg Television.
They are not going to change path from here. So this idea of a pivot or even a pause before we enter into a recession is really kind of a far stretch. That being said, we think the Fed is underestimating the employment impact. Their forecast of about 4.4%, we really see in unemployment exceeding 5% if we continue on this trajectory.
S&P today, lower trajectory there, down 35 points, down 0.9%. Dow Industrials down 211, down 0.6. NASDAQ today down 127 points, down 1.1%. 10-year yield 3.86% with the 2-year yielding 4.39%. Spot gold little changed, $17.71 the ounce, up 23 cents. Bitcoin today down 0.1%, 16,345. West Texas Intermediate crude down 4.2%, 85.19 a barrel. Briefly, Michigan's Attorney General says Alphabet's Google has agreed to pay a total of $391 million to dozens of states over its location tracking practices in what she called the largest such settlement in U.S. history. Google shares today, Alphabet down by 0.7%. Recapping, stocks lower, S&P today down by 0.9%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. So I got to say, I love this time of year for many reasons. There's Christmas trees being delivered to the city, and
it's not even Thanksgiving
New York
yet.
Stock Exchange.
We still got Halloween candy on the counter at home.
Eat it already. All right, but one of the reasons it's such a good time of the year, it's a super uber feel-good moment, courtesy of the team at L'Oreal Paris USA. It's an annual honoring of women who are committed to improving the lives and worlds of vulnerable communities, everything from civil rights advocacy and financial hardships from families with medical treatment or going through. There's just so much that they single out, and it's particular women who are on a mission.
We've got with us Ali Goldstein. She's president of L'Oreal Paris USA. She's with us right now in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. Ali, it's great to see you this year. It's good to have you back with us. How are you thinking about the program holistically in a year like 2022?
And it's called Women of Worth.
It's called Women of
Did
Worth.
I not say that?
I don't think I said it either.
Okay. Well, first,
everybody knows.
It's a Monday kind of day.
Thanks, Carol. Thanks, Tim, for having me back again. It's a privilege to be here. This program, the L'Oreal Paris Women of Worth, it's our pillar program for the brand. We're in our 17th year of doing this. We honor 10 women every single year. So we have an alumni network of 160 women. This year we will add 10 more women. And it's really about celebrating women who are leading grassroots organizations and giving back to their communities against probably some of the most important causes out there. And our job as a brand is really to support them financially. We do give them $20,000 each, but it's really about giving them access, awareness to everything that L'Oreal Paris can offer, and giving visibility to the causes that they represent.
And dig deeper, because, I mean, I've been at the event. It's really heartwarming because there's some really tough issues that are out there, and some of them are people who see it firsthand, or some people who just realize there's a vulnerable community and there's a way to do it better. So dig a little bit deeper into what it is, because it's just unbelievable.
So we look for the causes often that people don't want to talk about, and we look for a variety of causes. And this year, actually, when we surfaced and we were screening all of the applications, we had over 1,000 applications for this, of which we select 10.
And people nominate people,
and people
right?
nominate others. So some are self-nominations, some are friends and colleagues that nominate the women. And this year, we basically, where we netted out is there were 3 big themes that emerged. 1, mental health, no surprise.
Right.
2, issues related to socioeconomic issues. And 3, a host of causes that are supporting children. And that was really, this year, the big themes that emerged, which I think we are so excited and proud to be helping these organizations.
Now, I want to talk about one of the winners and their accomplishments, specifically Mindy Atwood. She's got 2 sons who dealt with life-changing illnesses at a young age, and that inspired her to launch an organization that helps families who are dealing with financial hardships for children who are in treatment and recovery as well. What really stuck out about her story?
So I think so Mindy's organization is called Patches of Light, and what's so great about her organization, which is similar for many others, is that it's really started through a personal challenge. So this is, she faced issues where her own children were suffering, as you said, from health issues. And oftentimes what we find out is the parents are so overwhelmed by the health issues and taking care of their children that they're not able to pay their rent, pay their utility bills. And the organization really supports people who are in similar situations to what she was in. And that was sort of the impetus for her creating this organization, to basically help people who need to be able to focus on their children and can't worry about continuing their jobs and paying their bills. And so it's truly grassroots, and she provides care packages, financial support, babysitting for the siblings, whatever is needed to these organizations. And that's one really great example.
Allie, don't judge me, but these guys know I'm obsessed with Shark Tank.
Yes.
But what's interesting about it is it's often people, I know, judgment, right, but what's interesting, it's often people, and sometimes it's a really heartwarming situation too, where they're just, whether it's something for their kids, something that's needed because they see it firsthand. And I feel like that's what's really remarkable about so many of these stories. These are people who are seeing things that maybe are getting missed by so much of our community, and they want to do something. And just got about 20 seconds and we'll come back.
Yeah, I mean, most of the stories are extremely emotional. You know, we have another, Susie Vibriel, Room Redux, and what she does is her organization goes in and redoes the bedrooms of children that have been abused in their actual bedrooms. Wow. So that's one that the hair on my arm stands up every time I talk about her.
Because it's
and
about
what she does.
physical space.
Exactly, and the memories that it evokes. And so the best thing she could do is wipe away those memories, or at least try to minimize them by changing the environment.
All right, we're going to come back with Allie Goldstein, president of L'Oreal Paris USA. We're talking about women of worth. In the meantime, back to World and National News and Ann Mostu. She's in our newsroom. Hey, Ann.
Hey, Carol. Hey, Tim. President Biden met for 3 hours with China's Xi Jinping and agreed that top officials will consult on a regular basis to deal with contentious issues and forestall a new Cold War. The president was asked if Xi seemed to be planning an invasion of Taiwan.
I do not think there's any imminent attempt on the part of China to invade Taiwan, and I made it clear that our policy on Taiwan has not changed at all. I made it clear that we want to see cross-strait issues peacefully resolved, and so it never has to come to that.
The president said if North Korea carries out a nuclear test, he would further beef up U.S. forces in the Pacific, which he said she did not take as any kind of threat aimed at China. Doctors and parents are looking to new drugs and vaccines to prevent a lung virus that's been filling pediatric emergency rooms more quickly than usual. Bloomberg's Nathan Hager reports from Washington.
The virus known as RSV typically leads to up to 80,000 hospitalizations a year for kids younger than 5 years old. This year, the Centers for Disease Control says infection rates have reached levels not normally seen until peak cold and flu season in January, and hospitalizations have hit at least a 4-year high. So far, Pfizer has seen positive results from its vaccine for pregnant women for RSV, and an antibody treatment from Sanofi and AstraZeneca has won regulatory approval in Europe. In Washington, I'm Nathan Hager, Bloomberg Radio.
Thanks, Nathan. And Jay Leno says he's okay after he suffered burns to his face due to a car fire. TMZ reports he was in the garage where he stores his cars when one erupted in flames. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Ann Mostu. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Ann, thank you so much. Carol Master along with Tim Stanovic live on Bloomberg Business Week. We are live on Bloomberg Radio. We are on YouTube and also streaming on Bloomberg Quick Take, so everywhere. We're going to get back to Ali Goldstein, president of L'Oreal Paris USA, in just a moment. In the meantime, our Emma Court of Bloomberg News out with a story and talks about New York City specifically and how they're going to spend, the city that is, will spend at least $600 million on a year's worth of shelter and services for around 24,000 Central and South American migrants who have flooded into the city. This is according to some new estimates released by the city's independent budget office.
Yeah, if you look at this on a per family basis, the figures reflect costs that can be as high as $93,000 a year for a 4-person family staying in a shelter and with 2 kids attending public schools. That's according to the independent budget office. The office did say, Carol, that a total cost of city services provided to the newly arrived asylum seekers may fluctuate, quote, as the number of people arriving and remaining in the city continues to evolve.
We've done a lot of stories about cities, trying to work with and help out the migrants that are coming into their cities after they are crossing the border. The new estimates do come as the city reports that the rush of migrants have slowed in recent weeks following a shift in President Biden's immigration policies at the U.S.'s southern border. Citing the slowdown, New York said it would shut down a temporary shelter on Randall's Island this week. That city comptroller, Bran Lander, estimated cost roughly $150 million to build. New York relocating migrants from Randall's Island to a hotel in Midtown Manhattan. So there's a lot of moving around based on, how they can accommodate the various migrants.
These estimates from the IBO largely do align with projections that were cited by Lander in September. He did estimate that the city will pay between $500 million and $1 billion on asylum seekers this year. The tab could grow, though, Carol, if the city provides migrants with more legal assistance, which would help them get work authorization. Case representation could cost $22 to $27 million, most likely paid for by both the city and private charities, according to the IBO.
I will say earlier in this story, it also talks about New York City, at least the mayor saying that they hadn't previously budgeted for these costs. So there is, I guess, some issues in terms of how to pay for it. All right. If you want to read that story or find out more, just head to Bloomberg.com or find it on the Bloomberg terminal. We're going to head back to Ali Goldstein of L'Oreal.
updates, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellett's choppy session on Wall Street today after two Federal Reserve speakers highlighted the central bank's resolve to be persistent until price pressures head back down to levels consistent with its 2% target. Down day for the Dow, down day for the S&P, down day for NASDAQ. We begin with the S&P down 35 points, a drop there of 0.9%. Dow Industrials down 211, lower by 0.6%. NASDAQ today down 127, a drop there of 1.1%. 10-year yield 3.85%. Spot gold up 86 cents the ounce, little change, 17.72 the ounce. Bitcoin 16,343, down 0.1%. West Texas Intermediate crude down 4.2%, 85.19 a barrel. Amazon.com plans to cut about 10,000 jobs, the largest ever headcount reduction at the e-commerce giant. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Carol Master along with Tim Stanovic live here on Bloomberg Business Week. Want to get back to Ali Goldstein. She's back with us, president of L'Oreal Paris USA, here in our Interactive Brokers studio. You know, Ali, you said you guys have been doing Women of Worth for 17 years, and so you've got a lot of alumni. As you look back and you look at what some of them have accomplished, how do you think about the impact that these women have had overall on so many important parts of our society?
Yeah,
and forgotten parts often.
I mean, I think these women have really just brought awareness and support for organizations that are so difficult to deal with. And many of the women in our alumni network, I mean, now 160 women, have really gone on and accomplished amazing things. We have one Nobel Prize winner. We have a few who have received presidential medals of honor. I mean, we actually have a pretty good track record. We've identified some fantastic women. And we've also just launched, it seems it's finally, but we've just launched a LinkedIn alumni network, because what we're also recognizing is the women themselves can help each other. So many of the causes become similar over time. And so the older women of worth, the more seasoned, can help the new ones. And L'Oreal Paris can kind of create this network that brings them all together.
Can you talk a little bit about how in the earlier years, how the themes changed to what the focus is in recent years, or what the themes are in recent years?
Yeah, I mean, I think the themes themselves don't change that much, but although I think we're more comfortable talking about kind of the dirtier topics.
I see what you're saying.
And things in terms of abuse have really become front and center. Mental health has become front and center. And then there are things that are timely. This year, one of the honorees is a nurse. Shannon McPeak from Operation Happy Nurse. And you can imagine with COVID and the pressure of being in hospitals, the mental health crisis that our nurses are facing. And so this organization provides support for nurses. That's extremely timely right now, probably has existed for a long time, but with COVID, it's rampant. And so we see trends sort of come up and down depending upon what's happening in the world.
Ali, I often think about, Tim and I spend so much time talking about the small business owner and how it's the backbone, of like the U.S. economy. And I think about what you guys have done over 17 years is through women with an idea, helping out a community, that piece by piece, it starts to make a pretty significant difference.
Absolutely. And really what we do is pretty simple. We help support them financially. We give them a forum to give awareness to their causes, which then brings additional support. And we sort of rally people around them, and we help educate. We help expand their network. So we did in August. We did a summit out in LA where we brought the 10 women together, so they meet each other and create that network. And then we bring speakers in to help them. And oftentimes it's things like how to manage social media, how to do fundraising even better, how to deal with legal issues, diversity, recruiting diverse talent. It's many of the things that large organizations often face, but these groups have so much fewer resources, and that's where we come in.
Have the geographies shifted at all in the years that you've been doing this? I mean, you have people from all over.
Yeah, we always have people from all over, and in fact, it's one of the things we look for when we do our selection of the 10. We purposely look for geographic diversity. We look for diversity across the board: age, ethnicity, geography, causes, but certainly we're seeing issues all over the country.
All right, we have to ask you, you know this, because we're at a funny time, and you talk about issues. There's so many...
What a different time versus a year ago when we last saw you, Allie.
Well, yes, but there's still lots of questions about kind of the global economic environment, and we feel like some things we could count on, whether it was supply chains and so on and so forth, like they're still in question. We're talking about recession. How do you guys see? You're a global company. You deal with supply chains. How do you see it right now?
I think we're learning to live in a very volatile world, and that's the new normal that we face. I think generally people like beauty. We've seen over the last few months it's been pretty resilient. I can't predict what's going to happen in the next 6 months, but I can tell you that beauty, there's an emotional piece of beauty, and doing your hair, putting on some makeup.
And you guys saw it through the pandemic.
We saw. We see ups and downs, but generally, we see a pretty decent resilience in the market.
Have you seen any shift yet in the way that customers are spending? I mean, you have so many different brands at L'Oreal, and I'm wondering if you're seeing some of the brands that aren't as expensive see higher sales, and essentially, for lack of a better term, some customers trading down to buy those.
I think we see very different. There's dynamics all over the place. So there are some group of individuals who might decide to switch from a department store product to a mass market product. In some cases, someone might take a break and spread their hair coloring and stretch it out a bit. Some people might decide, instead of going on vacation, I'm going to invest in a great skin cream. So there's lots of different dynamics that are happening, and all of it takes effect, And so we have a very diverse portfolio of products, of brands at all different price points, and that's our goal, is to reach everyone and provide an option no matter who you are and what you can afford.
Do you guys talk much about recession or concerns about recession and hunkering down in this environment?
I mean, we talk about it as we always have to. We always consider fluctuations in the market, and that's where the diversity of our portfolio generally helps us. Yeah.
All right, we just got about a couple minutes, and just to wrap up, and you guys actually have voting that goes on.
So we have voting. So each year,
for women of worth,
we narrow down to 10 women, and then we ask the public to select one woman who's our national honoree. She gets an extra $25,000. And so voting is now live on womenofworth.com. It will be live through the end of November, and then we'll announce in December who our national honoree is.
Can you believe you're still doing this?
It's great. We're going to do it forever. We're already looking to the 20th year.
Okay, so give us, last year we had
Yeah.
the national honoree come on our program last year, and she was fantastic.
Yeah, well, you had one of the honorees come on the program, and they're all fantastic. Honestly, the national honoree is really a way to engage the public and get people to read the stories, but all 10 are fantastic.
I will say that, having gone there and just being like, how do you single one out? And I think what's really great is you provide a platform for all of them, and they all benefit from one another, and the attention that you give them, and the support, because it's like having a seat at the table, and you give them that opportunity to have that seat and even do more, which is pretty impressive. Thank you. We needed some good feeling.
Nice way to start the week.
We really did.
My pleasure, and thank you so much for having me again, of course.
Good luck with it. Allie Goldstein, she's president of L'Oreal Paris USA, back in our Interactive Brokers studio, talking about the Women of Worth program. And you can find out more by just searching on it, and you can read at their website. All right. Monday over. We saw some selling into the close, Carol. The NASDAQ finishing the day down by more than 1.1%. The S&P 500, for its part, down 0.9%. The Dow, rounding it out, down 0.6%. Don't forget, we've got a bunch of economic news on tap for this week, including a read on producer price indexes. That'll come tomorrow. Then we've also got retail sales data. We're going to hear from some of the retailers, so we'll get a better feel on the consumers. But Monday's over.
Walmart and Home Depot tomorrow morning, bright and early.
They're coming. For Tim Stanovec and the whole Bloomberg Business Week team, I'm Carol Masser. Have a good and safe evening. This is Bloomberg Radio.